Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of TruthWorks. I'm Jessica Neal, your host, and I'm here with my co-host, Jeff Markowitz. Hi, Jeff.
How are you?
You?
I'm
I'm
great.
good. Yeah, I might get sucked up in a tornado, but other than that, I'm great.
That'll be an experience to talk about for sure.
It would be a little fun and a little drama for the podcast, but we've got bad weather in Texas. But I am good. But you are going to introduce our guest today, who I'm so excited about.
I am so excited to introduce Glenn. As you know, I used to be at Greylock, and I feel very confident saying that Glenn was my favorite CEO to work with. And look at, it's like, no question. We bonded.
Come on.
We sold it out together. He's just an amazing person, an amazing leader. And, I got to know Glenn when I joined Greylock in 2011 or 12. Well, I probably got to know you in 2012 because I joined in late 2011. But Glenn co-founded Plumtree Software in 1997. He took it through its IPO and he joined Redfin. And I think he spent a couple decades at Redfin, if I have it correctly.
Two.
And just transformed it into like the leading technology-powered real estate brokerage in the world and saved consumers billions of dollars, I would say. So Glenn's ability to attract leaders, to attract great board members, I think is just unprecedented because of the way he operates. So I'm really happy to have him on.
I'm excited too.
Man, I'm
Jeff,
embarrassed, Jeff.
You're embarrassed. You should be flattered.
Yeah, that's really sweet.
Yeah, that is sweet. I'm going to ask you a question, Jeff, because you work with so many CEOs and founders, and you mentioned a couple of things about Glenn, but what made him different from everybody else?
I think a combination of tremendous passion for everything he was doing, at least when I interacted with him. I think Glenn just showed up and was always on. And I don't think that was artificial. I think that's just who he is. And, I worked with Glenn on a bunch of board stuff and, he was able to attract amazing people to his board because his energy is just infectious. And look, when you believe so passionately in what you're doing, people see it. And I think it was not just a job for Glenn.
Yeah.
That's my interpretation.
Well, Glenn, welcome. And look at you.
Jeez. Thanks for the kind words, Jeff. I have to say that Jeff was my favorite partner at any venture firm. We had this soulful relationship. You really struggle when you're trying to bring on executives and board members, whether you have someone who's going to go the long, hard way with you. And I sometimes felt self-conscious saying why I didn't like someone or what I was looking for. And Jeff created this space where I could be my complete self and connect with other humans who would expand that complete self. And so that's why we have such a Wookiee bond. It's really deep.
Well, I love that. I love this. So, Glenn, we always like to go back in time a little bit because
No. Okay.
You probably didn't plan out that you were going to be the founder of Plumtree and, CEO of Redfin. Like, how did this all happen? Where did it start?
I think I am the luckiest person on the face of this earth. I tried to screw up my life over and over and over again, and the hand of God just came down and redirected me toward amazing people.
I read somewhere that you were like going to write a book and like you didn't really like the business world. Like you didn't want to be a part of it or something. I don't know.
Well, I think we all grow up wanting to do something really good. And I just couldn't figure out what that was. I am the son of a Jewish father. And he once told me this story about the three kinds of Jews. So a long time ago, Peter the Great said that Jews can't own land. And therefore, a small number were allowed to go to university. So there were farmer Jews that were kind of banished, and then there were the university Jews, doctors, lawyers, accountants, and then everybody else had no way to make a living. and they were the absolute lowest of the low. They were the wheeler dealer Jews. And so I think he was worried that I would become a wheeler dealer Jew, which is just another word for an entrepreneur.
Right.
But I tried to go to medical school. I thought about law school. I thought about becoming an academic. I didn't know what to do with myself. And when I got out of college, I tried to write a book, and my girlfriend broke up with me because I'd been unemployed for so long. And eventually I ended up at a little tech startup, and that saved my life.
Wow. What were you writing a book on? What was it going to be about?
Well, whenever you're 21 years old and writing a novel, the only subject is yourself. I'd grown up in this crazy family, and I was trying to write a story about that family. My older brother had struggles with drug addiction. My dad wanted to sail a boat around the world that was about the length of my desk. Each of us was crazy in his own way. And so I just wanted to tell that story. But what I found out, and I think this is relevant to the whole conversation we're going to have, is that when you go into a little room with your computer and try to be creative all by yourself, there are some amazing people who can do that. Leo Tolstoy or Mark Twain or Virginia Woolf. And then there's the rest of us who just get really blue. I didn't think that could happen to me, but it did.
Yeah.
And that's how I discovered that I wanted to be creative, but with other people. And that's just another word for business.
Right. And so you go to a technology company and it saves your life, and you just decide then that this is what I'm doing.
Yeah, well, there's a few components to that. I mean, the name of the company was Stanford Technology Group, and it was 3 Stanford founders who were about 25, and they employed 3 Berkeley people. And I'd learned that I should ask
Did
about
they
the
treat you
business.
poorly?
Well, I should explain. They were the best people ever. I still love those 3 guys, but their business model was 3 Stanford people start the company and 3 Berkeley people do all the work. And I had such low self-esteem that seemed like a good deal.
Right.
But they were all geniuses
Of course.
and still really young. And I think if I'd worked for a 45-year-old person coming out of school, I would have said, oh, well, I have to learn how this whole business world works. But instead, being firsthand with 3 dingbats, figuring it out as they went, I thought I can do this. And so a couple years later, that gave me the confidence to go out with one of them, actually, to start Plumtree. But it was just a really entrepreneurial, weird environment. And I felt like I loved it. If it had been all stuffy and suits and ties and stuff like that, I probably would have tried to be an artist again or do something else. But Silicon Valley really spoke to me in the 90s that you could build a business and be kind of countercultural or your goofy self. And it felt very messianic and mission driven. And I wanted to do all that. And so I just got sucked up into the most beautiful movement ever.
Yeah, no, and it continues to be a beautiful movement, you know?
Yeah.
So tell us about Plumtree, because that was really your first, startup, and it was wildly successful, which is kind of rare.
I think it was medium successful. We started it in 1997. Sequoia backed it. The idea was to build portal software to take all the stuff in big databases somewhere on a corporation's local network and put it all on the web so that people could see all this information on the web. And still today we talk about portals. And I think the big lesson from that was that I had such low self-esteem. We were talking about doing Quicken for food, where it would measure your calories instead of how much money you had. And our rationale was it was so small and unpleasant that no one else would want to do it. And then my partner, Kirill, one of 3 partners actually, said, why don't we do the big thing, which was to take everything and all these big backends and put it on the web? And I don't know if it seems big now, but it seemed huge to me at the time. And I felt like that gave us more room to move, more latitude to make mistakes, but more excitement to share with people. When we were recruiting and talking to people about counting calories, I could see their face fall. But when we said, we're going to take everything in a corporation and put it outside on the web, people were like, oh, that sounds kind of big and exciting.
Yeah.
And so now I have a bias towards tilting at windmills, trying to do something big, because I think everybody wants to be a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Jeff.
No, I was going to lead into, I don't even know if I've ever heard this story, but leading into Redfin. So how do you get to Redfin? I mean, it's so different from Plumtree.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I should back up a step. I almost went to medical school right before starting Plumtree because I just wanted to do something good. I felt like I'd been given some modest amount of talent. I should use it to make the world better. And then I just decided that software was so creative and exciting that I wanted to do it. But by the time I got done with Plumtree, I felt like enterprise software is sometimes kind of neutral, where good companies use it, bad companies use it. You're selling it to everyone. And I'd had sort of a great night of the soul. I know this is kind of meandering and weird, but that's the way life really is, isn't it? My
Yes.
older brother, who I'd already mentioned, couldn't stop drinking. He called me when I was still at Plumtree and he said that he thought he was going to die. And I thought I could talk him out of it. So I came up to the Northwest to sit with him every day and tell him, don't have that beer. And I found out, by the way, two things. Number one, you can't get somebody to stop drinking unless he wants to stop. But number two, we went to the emergency room so often that I would argue with his wife about which one to drive to. We drove because one had better food, but it was a little further away. So if it seemed like he was kind of okay, we'd go to the one with better food. And then he would come in really angry because he was dying. And these doctors who had seen him the week before and the week before that, and the week before that, didn't do the calculation that a business person would do, that there was no percentage in this person, that he was a lost cause. They worked their tails off to save his life every week. And I thought, man, I haven't met people like that. I want to be good like that.
Yeah.
I just want to be good like that.
Yeah.
And so I almost went to medical school again in my 30s, but it wasn't for me. And I thought I'm going to do something good in business. And that led me to, a business where you're working directly with consumers. You try to find an industry where you can make a difference. And real estate is perfect for that. I felt like housing is this fundamental need. There's a massive amount of data around it because public records were created. Writing was created to store who had which property. And so I could use all my nerdy stuff to help people get into homes. And I thought I would do it for a few years and then move on to something else. And I got addicted to it. And we can talk about why if you want, but I think I've said enough here. It was the luckiest thing that ever happened to me that I happened on to.
How did it come about? Like, how did they reach out, or like how did you stumble upon it?
Well, I had been watching Oprah Winfrey, in the middle of the day with Mark, my older brother, and just getting bluer and bluer because he wasn't getting any better. And then I just felt like I have to find a job today. Like
Okay.
I went downtown to Seattle, met all the VCs in one day and said, I will take whatever you have. Even if you think it's not going to work, we're going to make it work. But it just has to be something good. And Paul Goodrich over at Madrona, my longtime friend and partner, had just put in $500,000 to this real estate website that had been left for dead. And I said, that's the greatest idea in the history of capitalism. Put all the listings on a map, which is an idea that some other websites ended up copying. We're going to revive it and make it go nationwide and figure out a business model for it where we can actually make housing better. Put me in, coach. And then I think he actually offered, I do remember now, he offered the job to somebody else because I said I still might go to medical school, but I need a job today. But then the other guy asked for severance. And then he called me back and said, the other guy wants severance. Do you want severance? And I said, no, if you fire me, I don't deserve diddly squat. And he's like, you're hired. And the rest is history, as they say.
I love that. Didn't want to give him a severance.
Jeff, do you agree, though, that when people start getting fancy about severance, it's a bad sign?
It's a bad sign.
It's a bad sign. Yeah, especially in the negotiation process, like towards the end. Because it's like, I don't know, kind of either they're too worried about it, right? Or they're not confident in themselves. I don't know.
Yeah. Or they're not worried enough because
Right.
they actually are likely to get fired. Yeah.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know either. But yes, you have hired many people too over the years. And Jeff and I know this because we were raised in recruiting. But it's very telling when you get to the negotiations of like what people's priorities are, and some of the true colors come out. And I've passed on so many people at that moment just because of how they're handling those conversations.
Can we talk about that? Because
Yeah.
I am in awe of Jeff, and I'm
This is
probably
not
going to
about
be in
me. This
awe
is
of
about
you.
you.
No, no, no. I want to talk about this. This is for my benefit. I felt like I tried so hard to get better at deciding, who was going to be good, who was going to be bad, which grain will grow. And maybe I got 1% better over 20 or 30 years, but mostly I still think it's a crapshoot. It is so hard
It's
to do
hard.
that. And I just wondered what you learned about it.
Yeah. Well, Jeff, you want to go?
About getting better at the recruiting side.
Like, how do you know whether somebody's going to
Well,
be great or not?
I
I
don't
think
think
is the question.
you know, but I always used to tell people that, when you're interviewing and spending time with somebody, you're looking for all the reasons why they wouldn't be right. Because if you're looking for reasons why they wouldn't be right,
It's interesting.
then if they're going to get over the bar, they got to be pretty darn good, because you've essentially gone in saying this person's not right, and I'm going to find all the reasons they're not right. But it's just one step of it.
Yeah.
And
No, that's
but it's
really
also
wise. You know what you told me a
No.
long time ago that really liberated me to get better at recruiting? I felt like I'd put this person through his paces, dinner, drinks, references, and I wasn't excited about hiring him, but we'd come so far. I was walking down the aisle. I couldn't cancel the wedding now. And you told me, if you are not excited, truly excited to hire this person, we're not doing it.
Yeah.
And of course, the headhunter who was paid a fee on that pooped his pants when I called and said, Jeff Markowitz gave me permission to wait for somebody I really love. But you have to have that confidence. And I think it's hard when you're 25 and it's easier when you're 35 or 45.
It's
Yeah,
interesting,
it
and
is.
it's a bit of a
But go ahead,
segue,
Jeff.
not to the recruitment side, but a little bit of what you were just talking about. You've really always said, like, the hardest business problems are really questions of sort of the heart and the soul, and they're not always answered technically. And so talk a little bit about that for the audience, like how I think people lots of times don't trust their gut and their instincts, kind of the heart and soul side of it, and therefore they make bad decisions. But that's not how you operated. And I'm not to say that you never made bad decisions, but you always led from your gut, was my impression.
Oh, I tried. Another person gave me permission to do that. It's Peter Chernin. He ran Fox Entertainment for a long time, reported to Rupert Murdoch, liberal Jewish person who praised Rupert as the last great buccaneer, greenlit the Titanic, The Simpsons, and Living Color. And one time I saw him, I think at a Greylock event, where he was talking about greenlighting the Titanic, which was like a 3.5 hour historical epic. There's never been a movie that made money like that. And he said, the only thing I really know is what I like. And I decided I liked this movie. And if I was going to go down, it wasn't going to be for something that other people liked. It was going to be for something that I liked. And I used to feel that subjectivity was a bug, not a feature, that admitting this person just isn't my cup of tea, we're not going to work well together, was something I had to get over so I could be objective. And Peter, not that I know him on a first name basis, but Mr. Churden gave me this permission to kind of embrace my subjectivity and say, well, this is who I am. This is the kind of team I'm trying to build. And so, what I feel about this person, paying attention to just, do I want this interview to keep going? Or, oh my God, he was so smart and he had all the right qualities, but I'm just really glad I'm done with that interview. I guess I got that from Peter Chernon's decision to greenlight the Titanic.
But I think it's so important what you're bringing up, because a lot of people, maybe they don't have a Peter or a Jeff in their life, and they don't get this permission or this advice, and then they do exactly what you were going to do, which was not cancel the wedding and keep going down the path and not listening to that, like, whatever gut thing is happening, right? And then they end up doing it and it ends up not being great. And it's not because the person's not
Yeah.
great. They're just not great
Yeah.
in your construct, right? And then, 3 to 6 months later, you're back at it again. And then you've just lost all this time, a lot of money, maybe, because you're looking at the
Well,
wrong signals, I think, because you're looking at like I should like this person because they check this box, they check that box, they
but
check
it's
that
always
box, like,
go ahead, sorry.
but you're,
It's always
yeah,
it's
go
always a
ahead.
conflict
No,
too,
go.
because, if you're essentially in conflict with what you truly believe, and you're making decisions for
Yeah.
reasons that don't align with your values. And I think Glenn,
Yeah.
and I think your board, because I know you had such a soulful connection with your board, Glenn. You could talk a little bit about that. You made decisions that were aligned with your values, and it was very obvious when you were faced with something that wasn't aligned with your values because it created a problem for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to feel embarrassed about that. I always felt like I was this Berkeley hippie who was pretending to be a business person, and saying that a decision would be values driven instead of profit driven seemed shameful or embarrassing. And then actually this one board member you helped me recruit, Austin Ligon, who used to run CarMax, he was the founder of it, just told me, name a great entrepreneur who's completely rational. The strawberries are so much better than they have to be at Whole Foods because I think it's John Mack, whoever the founder was of Whole Foods, was just
Yeah, John
crazy about
Mackey.
fruit.
Yeah.
John Mackey. And Apple was that way with design, and everybody's got something that they really care about. And most businesses don't have a real relationship with the consumer because the consumer knows it's just one profit calculation after another. But when you pick up an iPhone, one of those first ones, and you think, someone crazy made this product, someone cared too much about the beveled edges or whatever it might be, you don't feel like such a sucker for falling in love with a corporation or a corporation's product. And so the board really gave me permission to do that, sometimes too much. And by the way, I had such a fraught relationship with our board at the beginning. It didn't start out the way that it ended. And Jeff was the one who told me, we can fix this. And some of it was about bringing different people on the board, but a lot of it actually was about me growing up and not blaming the board for problems that were
Glenn,
of my creation. So we could talk about that if you
talk a
want.
little bit
Yeah,
about
let's talk
that
about it.
piece, because I think entrepreneurs, I don't believe they always understand how to work with a board in a productive manner. And I think you excelled at that.
Yeah.
And I think your board members would say
Yeah.
you excelled at that. So explain how you thought about the relationship between you and your board. I know you went on walks with them, you went on runs with them.
Yeah, I'll talk about that for sure. But I should just start with how bad it was. I think I had led a board meeting by quoting a Yeats poem where an animal, assaulted a person. I quoted Colonel Jessup from A Few Good Men saying, you want me on that wall, you need me on that wall. I was crazy. And what made me crazy was most people who start businesses or run businesses have a problem with authority. I wanted to blame daddy every time we didn't sell enough houses. I often meet CEOs who complain about their board when the root issue is the product isn't working as well as we want it to, and we're not getting enough sales. And actually, right after that board meeting where I quoted Colonel Jessup, the great James Slavitt from Greylock took me on a walk. It was by a bunch of airport hotels near SFO. It wasn't very scenic. And I don't remember anything he said, but if I had to name the soundtrack for that walk, it would be Let My Love Open the Door, where he just said, I really believe in you, and I need you to start telling me the truth about what's going on in the business because I promise you I can handle it. And then I said, well, I don't know how to do this one thing, and this part of our product isn't working at all, and nobody wants this other thing that we've been trying to sell for years. And he said, oh, well, we should have a board meeting about all that stuff. And that refocused me on the proper subject of every board meeting, which is, what is really going on in this business. So many people, I remember once an exec was about to go in for her first board meeting, and we had this remarkable moment of candor where I said, Karen, what is your goal? And she thought about it. She was a diminutive person, but formidable. And she drew herself up and she said, I want to do well. I said, let's set that aside. You're going to do great. But if all you want to do is tap dance and put on a show and have everybody say you did a great job, it'll be a waste of the board's time. Do you have another goal, like a problem that we need to solve where we could actually get help from human beings who have paid a crap load of money to fly here and think about our problems? And that was the beginning of a much better dialogue.
Yeah, it is so interesting because so many founders do struggle, and I think boards, they evolve and transition as well. And, maybe in the beginning you have a bunch of investors in the board, and then you kind of move to where you have more independence. But that relationship, when it's healthy, it's so great for the business and for the founder. But some are very resistant to really opening up and having partners.
Yeah, well, I think there's been some changes in the venture world that make it harder. One is just, the $50 million seed round at a $400 million pre-price.
Yeah.
Every bit of growth for the next 4 years is priced into that round. And so this idea that we're learning and figuring out, James used to ask me, we spent $10 million on this failed initiative. What can we learn from it so that we can do better the next time? And that's easier to say when it's 10 million instead of we spent 100 million on something.
No, it's true.
So there's that pressure. And then I think that VCs are a little less likely to really invest in making you better and having a hard conversation. James did it in a very loving way, but there was another component to that, which is that I need you to show up in a different way. And many VCs won't do that because they're worried about deal flow.
Yeah.
So they talk bad stuff about the entrepreneur when that person isn't there, but mostly they want that entrepreneur to like them.
Right.
And to send them more deals. And I feel a little sad about that because James and some other VCs like Paul and Pierre Lamond at Sequoia were real mentors to me. And sometimes they just told me, what you're doing right now is bullshit. It is bullshit and it needs to change. And not many people are willing to tell a CEO that, which is why most of us, including me, can be so insufferable.
You seem so insufferable, really. Quite the opposite. So as you've grown as a CEO and, obviously you've navigated some very complex stuff. When you walked away from Redfin, what were you walking away with knowing differently? What were your biggest lessons?
Well, I think a lot of it is about love. So I know that sounds trite, but what else is there in this world? I started as sort of a nerdy software person. I still remember Redfin decided not just to be a real estate website, but to be the real estate agent. And at first we thought we could automate all of it, but we ended up hiring real estate agents. And I thought, this is such these people didn't go to Harvard and study computer science. I want to be like Steve Jobs. I want to be cool. And here I am hanging out with real estate agents. And one of them was working with this Vietnamese family where the parents didn't understand English and the kid was brought in and we were trying to get through this contract. And I was trying to write a spec or do something with code or some nerdy thing. And I'm like, this is annoying. These people keep talking. I sort of grabbed the door and went to close it to sort of performatively show that, they were making too much noise. But those people wore me down. My favorite people at Redfin are real estate agents. I think I went back to San Francisco one time because I was up in Seattle for Redfin. I still am. And one of my friends introduced me, look, Glenn, he's back from Seattle. He's become a real estate agent now. And I'm like, I don't appreciate that. But later it kind of became this badge of courage. And the reason it did is those, our agents worked their tails off. And what they really loved was helping other people. and they wanted to know all about my family. And at first I thought it was so they could kiss up or something like that. But now I'm not even there. And I'm texting like a million of them about what's going on with their kids and whatever happened to this or that. And I don't know how to describe it, but it just felt like a sea of love. And I used to think business was all ones and zeros. And basically I learned that from people who were just much better human beings than me. And it really changed me. Like if you'd interviewed me at the beginning of that, I would have been trying to sound super smart and saying pseudo intellectual things instead of trying, to really get at the heart of it, which is trying to get a bunch of humans rowing in the same direction.
Glenn, what were
Yes. Incredibly hard to accomplish.
What were some of the toughest learning moments for you at Redfin? Name 2 or 3. Name 1.
Gosh, well, I mean, the thing that, the hard part is trying to choose. It's sort of like name your favorite food. Well, can I choose pizza? And what I really regret, we got into a competitive situation where we had to have rental listings and not just for sale listings. And the cost of buying a rentals website was $700 or $800 million. We tried to do it for less and we couldn't. And we just took on a boatload of debt to buy a company. And it was in 2021 when interest rates were near zero and the housing market was booming. And there was an intellectual part of me that knows that when the music stops playing, a lot of bad things happen all at once. Fewer people buy homes, which affects our sales, and our investors are going to want their money back in a different way. But nothing can prepare you for the actual shoot feeling of that music stopping. And so we hired somebody to run the rentals business. And I sort of pussyfooted around with him about we needed to generate a lot of cash to pay off the debt. And maybe we put him in an unfair situation, but that was undeniably and indisputably the situation. And therefore, what I needed to do was to tell him in the most unvarnished way, this is what I need. And if you don't do it, leave. And I'd had some experience with that. I was nearly fired from the company I started, Plumtree. And this is a VC, Pierre Lamond, who just took me into his office and said I wasn't delegating enough. And the way he said it, it was like he was talking about a car that had been dented to a mechanic that needed to be repaired, except the car was my heart and the mechanic was me. And he did it in like 30 seconds. And then by the way, I cried. And then I told him, I am going to do a 180. I'm going to delegate everything. People are going to be begging me to get more involved. You should give me my job back. And then he said, okay, which was crazy, which brings me back to I'm the luckiest person ever. But the moral of the whole story is that you want to be a kind person. We all value social cohesion and getting along with people. But now I feel like there is something I need to tell someone. And I am going to do it. I'm going to write it down, then I'm going to crumple up that piece of paper and throw it out, and I'm going to say what was on the piece of paper.
Yeah. It's a great lesson. And many, a founder, but I would just say leaders in general and people in general don't learn that skill because it's hard to tell people the truth. And you'd rather avoid the conflict. And you're being too kind.
Or you wait.
Yeah. Yeah. You wait and it's too late.
Yeah. And then you explode. You're like, oh my gosh, why haven't you taken out the garbage?
Yeah. And you think, and I think there's a lot of times like you're suggesting, you're subtly dropping hints and you think that they should just know, but they really don't know until you exactly tell them what you want and you're super clear.
Yeah. I mean, a long time ago, Plumtree's CFO said management's easy. You just tell people what you want them to do. And I think that's actually hard to do, but it is the essence of it. Most people want to figure out what their manager wants. And often the manager just struggles to say, this is what I want. I think the other part of it that I really learned going through an acquisition that I want to make sure I speak to. Everyone thinks he's accessible, that you can tell the truth to me. And then Redfin got bought by Rocket. The CEO of Rocket, Varun Krishna, is just the nicest guy in the world. But I found it hard to tell him things that were disagreeable to him. If he believed in one strategy and I believed in a different one, I rewrote the email 83 times and I'd never rewritten an email twice.
Right.
And it made me realize how much harder I need to work, when I get another CEO role, to make it really easy to tell you for people to tell you the thing that you need to know the most. Some people, you get in a car with them and you just get some windshield time and they start talking crazy stuff and it's really good. But a lot of it is just when you hear things that you don't want to hear, instead of making that face,
Hey, Glenn,
you have to say, thank you.
Why was it so hard
for
you to write those emails to the Rocket CEO? Because it's counter to how you wanted your team to operate at Redfin. You then became
I know
the subject.
Well, I think part of it is that Rocket just had given us a couple $2 billion and I wanted to figure out how that culture worked. And I wanted the people who worked for me to fit in at Rocket and find their career path. I wasn't sure how long I was going to make it, but also I just felt like an undomesticated animal who'd been invited into the house. Like I didn't know how to work in that larger organization. And so I tried not to poop on the carpet. I tried not to eat off the dinner table. And it just meant that, I wasn't my full self. And there's a lesson for me there in how I handled Rocket, but also a lesson for me there and how I was as a CEO at Redfin, where I thought everybody could tell me the truth, but I now learn I want to work much harder to make it easier.
So it's saying to,
yeah.
I know you're not.
Well, it's partly what's made it hard for me to find something. I think I'm more likely to start a company than I am to come in as a CEO because I'm such an odd little duck. Trying to build a culture and find a mission that works for me isn't easy. And so building that trust with the team when you're the new CEO and they're all wondering, is he going to fire half the executives is always hard. But regardless, I think a lot of it, I used to just want to try to be the smartest person in the room. I know it's obvious to not do that, but it's hard to not do that when you're 25 or 35. And just being a little goofy and making jokes about yourself and saying over and over again, that's my fault. I was wrong. I thought that was the right thing to do, and it wasn't. Teaches people that you can stand up to Glenn and disagree with him profitably, where it can lead to a better outcome. A lot of times you want to say, well, you kind of told me what to do, but I actually figured it out on my own. No, thank God you spoke up. You saved me.
Right.
That's, I think, the way you want to empower people.
Absolutely. And do you think that just comes with, because I worked with Reed for many, 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 many eons. And he was very good at that. And, he created the space for people to tell them the truth. He was always honest and owned his mistakes and was real about them and never blamed, right? He had another company before for Netflix where he learned a lot of these lessons. But do you think that comes with just time and experience and wisdom and age? Or is it just like a human trait, like that it's in your DNA to be that way?
I think you have to go through some kind of near-death experience, some deeply humbling experience, because I was going to say that it comes with being a founder and not having to worry so much about being fired and just finally being secure in yourself. But I've met some founders who basically think they're infallible. If we had time, I'd probably go off a little bit on founder mode, which has a real kernel of true insight, but has also been a license to ill where you use it to steamroll other people and treat them badly and only one person has great ideas. That is just not true.
Right.
If you have to get into founder mode all the time, you have a bad team or you have a bad management style where you can't learn from other people. So I would bet that somewhere in his life, Reed had some experience where he dialed 1-800-EAT-SHIP. That's what did it for me.
I'm sure he did. Yes.
Yeah. And then you feel really grateful for the people around you who were trying to tell you. And you think, oh my God, I can't believe I nearly didn't listen.
Yeah. No, it's so true. And I think the founders that I know that have this, it is true. They have had those moments where it was like, okay, I'm going to listen now,
Can I just tell you one other thing
Worst.
that James taught me? Because
Yeah.
I had a really hard time with James is the guy from Greylock, Let My Love Open the Door walk. He told me that every once in a while you do have to go kind of, for want of a better phrase, founder mode and just say, listen, I know you really wanted me to go left, but we're going to go right. And even if 8 people want you to go left and you believe you have to go right, go right. And he said, but can you just do me one favor at the end of that? Can you call those people and tell them how much you appreciated, like replay their arguments and tell them that you actually heard them?
Yeah.
And that it was a hard thing for you, but you were going to go the other way, but you really appreciated and respected where they came from. And I said, okay, I'll do it. And I put it off because I thought, I don't really feel like doing that. And then after I did one, they're like, oh, thank you. You didn't have to call me, but I really appreciate that. And I feel really heard and respected. And then it got really easy to do that all the time. And sometimes, by the way, when I did that call, I realized, oh, I don't understand your argument as well as I thought I did. Let me reconsider it one more time. Because basically the last thing I'll tell you about being a CEO is that I work my ass off. I work 15, 16 hours a day sometimes. And there were 4 or 5 decisions where if I had just made better decisions, those 4 or 5 decisions, which each, could have been made, I guess, in a minute, I would have created more enterprise value than all those 14-hour days. And so, I try to make time really slow down when I have to make a big decision and create an environment where everyone can say what they really think and where we can make the best possible decision. Because there have been, 3 I got right and 2 I got wrong, or maybe it was the other way. I don't know. But I think about those a lot.
Well, I just adore you. And I'm so glad that Jeff got you to come on the show because
Thanks.
You are different. Yes. And I love it.
I don't think so.
I think you are. I think you are. Jeff
That's
and
very sweet
we have
of
a
you.
lot of data. We have a lot of data on this issue. We've met a lot of people, and there's something special about you. We always put a little pressure on our guest, and you've already given us so much insight and inspiration, but we always like to have you leave us a little bit of inspiration to think about as for the listeners. So is there anything that you want to gift our listeners with today?
I would just go back to the love thing. I screwed up in every single way you possibly could, but all my crimes were crimes of passion. And if people see that, if they see that you really care about them, but you didn't handle a situation with them well, or you really care about the company, but you drove it into a ditch, if people just see how much love you have, they will let you get away with almost anything. And flip side, if they don't feel the love, you can make the tiniest little mistake and they'll jump on you and say, what is that?
Oh, yeah.
And so I just think, I hope I can give people the confidence to let their love show. I know it sounds very Hallmark, but there it is. That all life is a bunch of cliches.
I love that. And the soundtrack, Let My Love Open the Door, is going to be in my head all day. Sorry, I've already been singing it. Yeah.
Don't get sucked up into a tornado. I think we need to end now before it touches down.
I heard it.
I did get an alert on the phone, but it was only for a flash flood. So I was like, it's fine.
You're crazy. You're crazy. I don't want blood on my hands, Jessica. Let me know you're okay.
No,